Good afternoon, everyone. We are really excited to join you as we close out a really important Women's History Month. I'm Carol Horowitz. I'm a professor of population health and medicine and the director of Mount Sinai's Institute for Health Equity Research. I'm also the first dean for gender equity at Mount Sinai, and I'm really honored to be in your company. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join this special webinar, for sending in your questions and sharing your enthusiasm. Special thanks to the Office for Alumni Affairs and Development and the Office for Women Careers for working with us, and to Devin Madden and Danielle Rivera, who really made everything happen. We all, and I'm sure you are as well, committed to foster at the highest possible level a diverse and outstanding group of women in science and medicine. Our Office of Gender Equity was established in 2019 to enhance our systems and our climate so that all faculty and trainees are valued and we all have the opportunity to succeed and thrive regardless of gender expression or gender identity. Our office includes the Office of Women's Careers led by Dr. Sandra Mazur, and we'll soon be announcing 2 senior associate deans to join our office. I'd like to briefly highlight some of our initiatives, share a little data with you, and then turn it over to our esteemed speakers. So the way we work, and we invite you all to join us in the Office for Gender Equity, is to work across our health system and beyond. We have a transdisciplinary team of experts who come together and share and catalyze ideas. We're looking to address and we assess inequities in compensation, in promotions, in awards. We've done a lot to recruit diverse faculty, including revising the Dean's Search Committee guidelines and processes. We work really hard to propel the careers of junior faculty with promising independent research careers. We're also navigating family caretaking challenges. For example, we just announced our 2nd year of funding to distinguished scholars. Please check out our website and you can see fabulous videos that highlight them. We work very closely with the Office of Faculty Development and others to have conversations around mentorship, sponsorship, and coaches, and barriers and facilitators that women face in these areas. Just this afternoon, our 2 offices partnered with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and the Center for Scientific Diversity to explore how mentor-mentee relationships foster development and success of women and BIPOC folks, BIPOC faculty in academic medicine. As you all know, family-friendly policies continue to be critical. You've probably seen the new lactation pods we installed on our campuses, and we're continuing our work toward emergency backup care, and we're instrumental in parental policy revisions soon to be announced at Mount Sinai. We're also working closely with a number of partners to streamline and enhance the ability to report and address mistreatment at Mount Sinai. We need to make sure that everyone is comfortable coming forward. We've held numerous conversations and panels about this, and we will continue to do so. One area we're working hard on is doing more work around microaggressions, helping people understand what they are and to be an upstander if they witness one. Our program in this area will be announced later this month. And we invite you to join us in honor of Women's History Month. We're creating a virtual quilt complete with pictures from people all across Mount Sinai. We're making history each and every day through our personal and professional lives. People are sharing women who have lifted them up or triumphed through these tough times, and women are sharing their accomplishments and joys. So please join us and we'll share information with you about that later. I want to make sure you have plenty of time to hear from our panelists, but before we do that, I'm going to ask if you can put up some data. I want to walk you through some of the data. In summary, it really shows while we still have a leaky pipeline, we're seeing some progress in our numbers, and we should all be proud of that. This first slide shows Mount Sinai medical students and graduate students, and you can see over the last decade, we've increased the number so that now the majority of medical students and graduate students are women. Here you can see how we're doing here compared to nationally. And you can see the green is nationally and the blue is Mount Sinai. We have, while we're not perfect, we are doing great in terms of graduate students. Medical students, you can see more than half are women. You can see for assistant professors, now half of our assistant professors are women. Associate professors, we're not doing as well, but still 40%. And in terms of full professors, we're getting better and we're doing better than the national average. And we're working to make these data better and better. Next, please. And you can see here, and I hope you're all really excited to see this. I certainly am. In 2011, only 9% of our deans were women. Now almost half of our deans are women. In 2011, less than half of our senior admin folks were women. Now it's just about half. I think that's the last slide. Oh, one more. Sorry about that. This is also really exciting. You can see here when we compare ourselves to a decade ago, 9% of our chairs were women. Now 20% are. 16% of our endowed chairs were women. Now 27% are. And in terms of our cross and transdisciplinary institutes, which are at the heart of Mount Sinai, we had no female institute directors in 2010. Now 36% of our institute directors are women. So we do have a ways to go, but I hope you're all proud of how we're doing. Thank you. I'm gonna stop here and turn this over to Sandy Mazer. And I'm gonna say that we're all excited to hear from Mount Sinai alumni about their insights and their perspectives on career advancements and the lessons they have learned. This is the crux of why we're all here today. To begin, I'd like to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Mazer. She has the honor of introducing our extraordinary panelists. The women featured today we're so proud that they've developed their careers and educated here at Mount Sinai. It's because of people like them that our office exists and that we are devoted to continuing to foster at the high level of possible a diverse and outstanding group of women in science and medicine. So on to Dr. Sandy Mazer. For those of you who have not had the honor to meet her, meet her. She's amazing. She's a professor in Mount Sinai's Department of Ophthalmology, in the Department of Pharmacological Sciences, and she's the director of the Office for Women's Careers. And she is the mentor of the mentors and the advisor and the sponsor for everyone. And I think I see everyone nodding their head. We all know this. She's a tireless advocate for gender equity and someone we are so, so lucky to be able to work with and learn from every single day. On to you, Sandy.
Oh, well, thank goodness I do not blush. Thank you so much, Carol. And thank you for all the work that everybody's come together in doing this today. Carol Horowitz, as she said, is the first dean for gender equity, and we have just moved forward. The door has been open to us to make so many changes, and Carol's initiative and the work with Devin Madden and Danielle Rivera, we're really very, very fortunate, and we need you to continue to feed back to us about how we can get even better. So today's presentation, though, is just glorious for me. This Women in Science and Medicine, as was pointed out, it's the end of March, the end of Women's History Month, and we decided we needed to take advantage of this to feature this terrific panel of women scientists and physicians, and they all have ties to the Mount Sinai community in one way or another that you'll hear about. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and briefly share what their current role is and actually what they do and how this ties into some of the training that they've received at Mount Sinai. And finally, again, in this short segment, because we'll go on to many other parts, but why they decided to pursue a career in science and medicine. So in alphabetical order, please let me start with Dr. Alexis Coleman, and please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Sandy. I'm Dr. Alexis Coleman. I have a number of different roles. I serve as the Associate Dean for Alumni Affairs. I'm also a professor of orthopedic surgery. And then I also have dual roles with the United States Tennis Association. I serve as their chief medical officer for the US Open, and then also the team physician for the US Fed Cup team, which is typically the top 4 elite female professional athletes that travel the world for different tournaments. So my relationship to Mount Sinai started actually when I was a sophomore at Princeton University. I applied for and got into the Humanities and Medicine program, which is now called the Flex Med program. And as part of that program, I came to Mount Sinai to do a few rotations between my junior and senior year. And I signed up for something called orthopedics, which honestly, I had no idea what it was. I just kind of liked the name of it. So I did my rotations, and then I came back in senior year, realized that this might just be something I would be interested in. So I actually took advantage of my alumni network from college and wound up emailing a number of different orthopedists in the New York City area. And one of them, Dr. Evan Flato, wound up responding to me. And at that time, he came to Mount Sinai when I started as a first year. And the road to being a practicing orthopedic surgeon is a pretty long road. So during those 4 years of medical school, I worked with him. And then after that, did 5 years of residency, followed by 1 year of fellowship in sports medicine. And then he actually hired me back for my first and only job since finishing that road. In terms of orthopedic surgery, it's a mix of both being in the office as well as in the operating room. I can tell you probably one of the most satisfying things of being a surgeon is being able to use my hands to help someone who can't lift their arm anymore, can't walk anymore, and then to be able to restore that and then see them recover is probably one of the highlights of my specialty. But I'll get into later about the pros and cons of being an orthopedist.
Thank you so much, Alexis. That was really informative and lovely. So then our next panelist is Dr. Anna Fernandez Ma, and I will allow you to introduce yourself.
So hello, everybody, and thank you for attending this webinar. We're very happy to be able to share our experiences with you. I am a professor in microbiology here in Mount Sinai and also in medicine and infectious diseases. And I actually have trained my whole career in Mount Sinai. So I came actually when my husband came for a postdoc position, we came from Spain, and I was actually fortunate enough to find some room in the same department in which I started as a volunteer. And I was given the chance to really pursue my PhD, apply to the program, and I was actually given the chance to work in a lab before I even was in a program. So I really kind of learn from every point of view what it is to do science, in a fantastic department. And I am very happy to be part of the microbiology department, in which I have learned a lot, but also I have developed my own little niche. You know, my whole department works in influenza viruses, but I decided to move on and develop a new program with different viruses. I work on dengue virus, which is a tropical disease that is actually very prevalent in the world. So I developed a program in which I could really tackle a lot of the aspects of dengue disease. And at the same time, I was really very interested in training and being a mentor. So I was running the microbiology training area for the grad school for 10 years. And I really enjoyed that role for a lot. I learned from all the students, and I really tried to shape their path as much as I could. But, it was really very satisfying to see students actually going through the program and developing their own careers, or having many different career choices, actually, because not only everybody goes to academia. So it was really very fulfilling for me. Then I was very fortunate to get involved in many big program projects. So I had to step aside. I don't like it to call it step down. I step aside on my role in the graduate school, but I really took on more responsibilities in terms of big projects, more administrative burden, but at the same time was able to really work with a lot of different clinical professionals in terms of working with clinical samples. So my career has been really evolving, and I have enjoyed every step of the way. And Mount Sinai has been a fantastic home for me, because I have been really going from very basic virology to actually more translational medicine. That for me is actually an ideal situation in which you really get to validate with real samples what you did in the lab. So Mount Sinai has been a fantastic opportunity for me. I actually time myself because I talk too much. So it's really something I would like to share with you in the following questions, but that has been my experience.
Thank you so much, Anna. And our next panelist is Dr. Allison Friedman. And Allison, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Allison Friedman. I'm a professor at Hunter College. I started my professional career as a research assistant at Columbia, and then I started in the PhD program at Mount Sinai with Dr. Claude Weiss, which was a fantastic experience. And then, like many on the panel, I continued to do, and I did my postdoc at Mount Sinai, moving from into the pharmacology department with Dr. Minghu Han, where I kind of completely changed systems from a sea slug to a translational mouse model. And I did my postdoctoral work with him, which was an amazing experience. And then I went out into the job market to try to stake my claim and remain in New York as a lifetime New Yorker, and was lucky enough to find a position as assistant professor at Hunter College at the City University of New York, where I'm now co-chair of the neuroscience graduate program. So that's exciting, and trying to elevate all the diversity within neuroscience. And exciting part of my career now is when I am working on letters to get students into medical school and into their PhD programs, and really starting at the beginning again for a lot of these students is kind of exciting, as well as leading my research.
Wonderful, thank you. And last but absolutely not least, Dr. Marjorie Laurent Roy. Marjorie, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this discussion. So my name is Marjorie Laurent Roy. I am originally from the Caribbean island of Dominica. And since the age of 10, I've known that I was always going to be a physician. However, at the age of, while I was in college, I had my first experience actually with Mount Sinai when I joined the summer undergraduate research program many, many years ago. And after that summer, I was exposed to research, which was something that was foreign to me at that time. And I knew that I wanted to learn more about that. So once I graduated from college, the focus shifted a little bit. I still wanted to be a physician, but I was curious about those 10 weeks that I spent at Mount Sinai. Therefore, I decided to join the post-baccalaureate research education program also at Mount Sinai, which was run by one of my mentors, Terry Crodridge. So after those 2 years, it's basically solidified my interest in science, and I knew that I was going to pursue a career as a physician scientist. So after those 2 years, then the next step came to go into grad school / med school, and I joined the MD PhD program also at Mount Sinai for another 9 years. And I did my thesis with Adolfo Garza Sastre, where I studied how pathogenic viruses inhibited the host immune response. And these were I always say my grad school years were some of the best years of my being. I met really amazing people there, from the great relationships, excellent mentors. And then I finally moved on, unlike, some of the people on the panel, I moved on to Albert Einstein Montefiore, where I did my residency in internal medicine for 3 years. And subsequently, I joined the infectious diseases fellowship program at Yale for my clinical / postdoctoral training with where I did my postdoc training with Pete Creswell. And I have stayed on there after my training at Yale, where I am currently an assistant professor in the Department of Internal Medicine in the section of infectious diseases, where most of my time, about 75 to 80% of my time, is devoted to my research program, and the other 20-25% of the time I spend on the clinical infectious diseases consult service. And thank you.
Well, I don't know how the rest of the audience feels, but right now I would be up cheering for this amazing group of women. And thank you all for being willing to be part of this. Now, what I'm going to be doing going forward is throwing out a question. We have 3 questions, which will be followed by some questions that were submitted by the audience previously. But what I will do is I will ask the question, and it has 5 different parts. Pick the part you'd like to answer, please. And what I will do is we'll start in alphabetical order and we'll rotate from there. So in asking the first question, we'll be going to Anna Fernandez Ma. And the question is, as a scientist or physician, what challenges have you faced in your career? Any additional ones because of your gender or ethnicity? And in the past, currently, or even related to COVID, how have you accustomed to pivoting, and how do you overcome barriers and position yourself for success? Anna, you have 2 minutes to answer the question.
Okay. So, I mean, I have encountered, of course, like everybody else that is working in science and in many of the professional settings, many obstacles. I don't like to call them problems, but it's really time is probably the main thing. You know, like you don't have enough time to do everything you need to do. And I think, you know, as women, we always like to do everything and to do everything well. So we really push ourselves to do too much most of the times. And when the time comes to have a family, to raise kids, you also want to do that well. So for me, that was the main challenge. You know, I had my 2 kids when I was a postdoc, and I had to come to the lab. It's not when you are a mentor, you can actually, and now you can work from in Zoom. But you know, at that time it was not possible. So just to try to tackle everything, so you have to prioritize, and you have to realize what is important and what is the priority for you. So you don't really want to lose the quality of life that you want, and the quality that, you know, you want to be involved in your kids' education, but you have to give something up, and you do, you know. So I actually gave up my sleep, which is, you know, I decided I only needed 4 hours of sleep. So that's actually a way that you find, so you really find a way to really tackle things. But for me, it was really make sure that I was happy to what I was doing. And, you know, like now that my kids are grown, to see that my daughter is proud of me for like continuing my career at the same time as I was involved in her education. I think that was really very, very nice to see, you know, that you really put your priorities in a way that actually works out. So I always tell people, make it work for you, and that things will fall into place.
Thank you. So the next person, then Allison Friedman. Allison, please answer any part of that question you'd like about the challenges you've faced.
Yeah, I mean, there's a similar challenges of balancing family and work and your lab family and that requirements as a mentor, you know, the responsibility you feel to your students. And I think what Anna said is completely true. I'll answer the part about the COVID part of it now. So, right, you find that the solution before was I outsourced, I asked for help. I had a team of people who helped me raise my 2 and 5-year-old at this point to keep my career moving forward. And I think with COVID, that team had to be shrunken down, and now that balance is off. And I think for a lot of it now, it's just accepting that the trajectory, you know, has to shift a little bit, and then hopefully will shift back for both your family and your workplace, and accepting that and moving forward positively, right? So this is kind of where I'm at personally, as far as the challenges I'm facing today. I would think a year and a half ago, I would tell you that you can do everything at the same time. As long as you have the funds and you have the support of your institution, and to speak up and ask for those funds or support in different ways. But now with COVID, I think that's another layer of it is just knowing now that things will change a little bit, and hopefully we'll go back and put that stuff in writing, you know, for your deans, for your academic, for your students, you know, in letters that you're writing, and put it down in paper to say, this time was lost because of my lab was shut down. This time with my child was, you know, prioritized for safety, and having that down. So when you look back in 10 years and be like, what happened here? At least you know. And for reviewers and for grant reviewers and your future and for yourself. So that's where I'm at now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Marjorie, may I ask you how you would answer the question about your challenges?
Sure.
And how you've met them?
So I have alluded to one already in terms of the length of my training, about 22 years or so of training. So during that time period, then again, balancing, you know, your family, of which I'm very, very grateful that I had a very strong support system. Raising my family, actually my son is actually at Sinai and about to graduate from the medical school now. So you know, everything just came back full circle. So having that support system to be able to, you know, to spend those years in training and having the family. So you, as you know, Anna said, that you're always trying to balance and you're trying to do everything well, right? You're trying to be a great mom, and you're always feeling like, you know, I'm not doing enough at work, and finding that balance, that's key. And I'm still trying to find that balance today. So that never really goes away. So time. And another thing is, as a physician scientist, I just have to comment on that for the young people that's, you know, on this path, is that, so from the time, you know, you go to college and you get to the point where you establish your own program, you're not really independent because, you know, until you get that R1, but all these years has gone by, right? The years go by, and you know, you go back to the lab, and then you barely can run a Western blot, right? You barely can run a gel at that point because of all these issues with, you know, you go to clinical and back to research. And then, so one thing that keeps me up at night is the whole funding aspect of my research, right? So that keeps me up at night. And just one thing I have to comment, just, you know, for the audience, is that it's doable. And again, striking that balance between, you know, your clinical duties and your research duties, and finding ways to fine tune that so you can actually, you know, find ways to build that program and keep your family intact. So that's one of the challenges. And the second thing, and, you know, Allison, you know, Dr. Friedman talked about that, is also with the recent, the current COVID pandemic, is that what happened for infectious diseases physicians like myself that do basic science research, we have to spend more and more time on service, right? So that takes away from your research time. So that's definitely, there's no shame in saying, look, during COVID, you know, I had to do X, Y, and Z, right? So that should reflect in how we proceed.
Thank you. And Alexis, you're last on this question, please.
Yeah, I think I'll answer actually the gender and ethnicity challenges. You know, as an orthopedic surgeon, it's kind of a double whammy, both being Asian and being female. Less than 7% of all practicing orthopedic surgeons are female, and less than 7% of practicing orthopedic surgeons are Asian. So to put that in perspective, when I was a resident, and I started about probably 2 decades ago, there were 60 residents, and I was one of 4 women. Luckily, those other 3 were great. So they really became my support system. But then, you know, I think now fast forward 2 decades later, and I heard a funny story the other day where I think, you know, another female mom surgeon was asking her kids, a boy and a girl, what they wanted to be when they grew up. And the boy said something like, I didn't know boys could be surgeons. And so that really shows that the winds are changing. And so I think it is, you know, either you find your support system within or you find it slightly external. So what Sandy and Carol are doing in terms of bringing awareness and support and events like this, this is where you find the support if you don't have it in your own group. So I would say I think one is awareness that these issues are there. And then the second thing is then going out and finding that there are efforts to do it. And sometimes you have to look, but I think now because there is awareness, there are groups to help with support in fields where it is more male dominated.
Thank you. And that's a perfect segue into question number 2, because that has to do with how has mentorship and sponsorship played a role in your success as a woman scientist or physician? And then what advice was given to you that you continue to use to practice? And what advice would you give to the next generation of women who are pursuing a career in science and medicine? And although Alexis just touched on the statistics, what I didn't hear, and I'm not asking you to include this, but if it does make a difference, whether there was any barrier that you felt that was put up to you because of your gender or ethnicity. So let's talk about the mentorship, sponsorship, et cetera. And we start now with Dr. Allison Friedman.
Hi. So mentorship played a huge role. And I think sometimes people don't always think and see mentors that are maybe not exactly like themselves as useful. And I think the advice that I have is really that both my mentors I had that were really guiding my career and was a place where I went for support, you know, academically, as well as, you know, a career and future and my life, were both males. So there is a lot of support out there now, especially I think where male scientists and physicians are happy and open to mentoring females in a way that I think they weren't before. You know, it's a very, I think they're more aware of the importance of it and aware that they were just maybe previously mentoring people who just look like them. So now I think that's something you should take advantage of. And then some of the best advice that was given to me was from a female mentor. And sometimes mentors aren't people you're the closest with, right? Or it could be someone you just interview with, meet with a couple times, and you have a connection and you keep in touch. Was that sometimes you need to move yourself around a little bit from where you are to shine, right? So that there's so many wonderful things happening someplace, especially in academia, this kind of nomadic lifestyle you're supposed to lead and move around from place to place. That the benefit of that is that you bring with you a new perspective to a new place, and you're able to shine brighter when the people around you, are, being attributed to all your successes, right? So that kind of breaking point from your mentors is, very important, and something I think as a mentor now I'm more aware of, right? So as I have my graduate students moving on, what is theirs, what is mine, and that whole process, is exciting and also kind of terrifying, right? So you create these little scientists that take your ideas off with them, but it's growing them, which is really nice. And then just the advice for the future really is just keep that network close, and realize that the mentors aren't always the people above you. It can be a colleague, it could be someone who's gone into industry when you went someplace else, and now this is someone you can get information from as you get older. So mentorship never stops. That's the idea. I think people think in college it's over, or med school it's over. It keeps on going for your whole life.
Thanks, Allison. And next, Marjorie, please share with us some of your insights about, I know you've had amazing mentors along the way. Please tell us what you have taken with it and what you give.
I have been very, very fortunate to have both strong female and male mentors. And I will even go one step further to say advocates. And I just one small story. I remember when I was a resident in the Bronx at Einstein, that we had this meeting on finding mentors for people, women in medicine, and people of, underrepresented minorities, finding people who look more like us, right? And the chairman, I'll never forget that evening, the chairman of the Department of Medicine at that time, he walked in and said that, you're talking about, mentors, but you always have to think of, advocacy, the person that would advocate on your behalf, right? And he gave one example of, someone who had a mentor who they had nothing in common actually when they first met, right? And that was me and one of my mentors I've mentioned, at every chance. And we look nothing alike. We came from different worlds, but she wasn't just a mentor. She became a friend. She became a colleague. She was an advocate, right? So I think that's key to where I am today. And, I've moved on from Sinai. I have many mentors. And again, they don't always come from, somebody who has, more experience, but, people in the, that you work with, right? Who has, they've moved on and they can advise you and help you along your way. And even at Yale, so again, we work hard, right? Working hard is like key, advocating for ourselves, but again, without mentorship and strong advocacy, then it would not be possible for me to be where I am. So for the younger folks coming up, again, you will keep, you cannot do it in a vacuum, right? And I would say to not just have one mentor, but have like a network of people from these different backgrounds and these different experiences that can help you, right, to move along. And that would be my advice for the younger generation.
Thank you, Marjorie. And I think the first woman mentor you talked about, who is a phenomenal person. Yes, we've all been so lucky So finally, Alexis, you've already mentioned some of your mentors and the way you've worked in the network. Please tell us more about mentored sponsorship and what you've learned.
Yeah, I think Allison made a good point in that there are plenty of men who want to support women. I think one, I don't know if it's a misconception, but sometimes people wonder, well, how do I even start that mentoring relationship? Like, do I just go up to someone and say, can you be my mentor? It doesn't really work that way necessarily. And so sometimes it does sort of have to evolve, and you sort of try on different people and see if it works. And maybe not every relationship works, but in terms of also what Marjorie said, if you have that network, you know that you can go to this person for this advice or someone else for a different type of advice. So I think, they can be in many different roles in your life. I will also put a plug in for the Sinai alumni. In particular, we have a database called the Alumni Connect database, which actually has over 300 Sinai alums across the medical school and the graduate school. And basically, these are people who are saying that they are ready, willing, and able, and they want to be a mentor and help. So that's also a resource for students to look into. But one thing I would say is probably one of the best pieces of advice that I got during training was, as I said, when I started training, and even now, there are not a lot of female orthopedic surgeons in particular. And so there's various barriers as to why this is. But someone told me that, yes, it looks on the outside like, it takes a lot of brute strength and the hours are terrible and this and that. And I think actually, Sandy, when I did one of your Just Dessert events a year ago, there was a student at that time who said an anesthesiologist told her, don't go into surgery as a woman, you can't have a family, this and that. But, you can really make your career whatever you want it to be. So I would say, don't let just what it looks like externally to you to dissuade you. No matter what field you go into, there's a lot more flexibility than there used to be. And so I think that your job may not always be the hours you want it to be when you're training, but you can mold it that way and make it what you want to be later on.
And as Alexis just quoted from her Just Desserts presentation, I've done this for about 10 years now with various women who've been successful in science and medicine. And what's the secret? What do you do? And the one thing I'll say, and I'm listening to each of you about being a parent, is that it takes more than two people to raise a child. And so everyone who talks about at least that third person or fourth person, it's not just the two people who actually were the biological parents who can make the difference. So factor that in as you plan. So now, Anna, would you please share with us your ideas on this?
I think I've always been extremely fortunate to have fantastic mentors. And again, in my life, there were initially male mentors. Of course, Sandy has always been my role model, but that's a separate story. Sandy is amazing, and she has really inspired me and many women in Mount Sinai. But in my case, there were male mentors, and they were very strong men. But one of the things that I was told very early on is that you can do it, and that is something that I really value. If someone really tells you you can do it, you actually doubt yourself a lot. And then if you have a person that says, you can do this, I think you could do this, and you would be great at this. And I remember, my first mentor was Peter Palese, which is a very tough cookie and but he's a great mentor because he really teaches you. And I always used to say, because you're pushing me to do this. And it's like, and I never push you. I just put you at the edge of the cliff. You just choose if you want to jump or you don't want to jump. And it's true, you need that person that puts you at the edge of the cliff and say, you can do it, but you choose to do it. And I think for me, that was the most valuable advice because I really had the power to do it, but he actually made me lose that initial fear of getting to the edge of the cliff. And I'm actually terrified of heights. So that's actually something that helped me a lot. And then there was something that was a negative thing that I was told that made me think. And I was mentoring a student, actually. I was helping a student decide what to do next when I was in the grad school. And she told me that I have been very helpful to her, but then she told me, Anna, you are too nice. You will never make it in science. And it really, I actually thought about it and I said, she really meant it. And then I thought, no, I think, why do I have to stop being nice? Like, so it's really owning your personality, so you will be successful if you are still true to yourself, so do not let anybody tell you, you have to be tougher, you have to do this, you have to do that. You can still be nice and get things done. So it's really understanding what your strength is. And if your strength is being nice, try to be nice, but in a successful way. So it's really like this turning around people's comments into like, what can I learn from this? So I think for me, that has been very helpful to listen to what people tell me and actually learn about what it really does it pertain to me or not. Is it really something that defines me? And then for my students, I tell them, I'm your platform. You need to use me to get to the next step. But I cannot read minds yet, almost. So if you don't know what you want to do, I cannot help you get there. So really trying to be there as the platform for them. You're not an extension of me, you are yourself. And I want you to use me, actually, because I want you to take advantage of being in my lab to whatever, I can put you in contact with. So pay it forward.
Thank you. Terrific set of answers to question number 2. So last question officially is question number 3, another one of these mega questions. So what do you see for the future of science and medicine, and how will having the more ethnic and gender diversity we are seeing among scientists impact the fields of medicine and science? And can you share an important moment or highlight in your career and what it meant to you? And finally, do you have any career building and networking tips for today's graduates? So Marjorie, you now get the chance to start.
Thank you, Sandy. So the field in which we work, right, as physician scientists, right? So there is much that we can gain by having more diversity, right? Diversity is a good thing. There's more innovation, there's more creativity, you learn from other people's point of view, right? So for example, when I was a grad student, my mentor is from Spain, and it was a melting pot in the lab, right? We had people from Mexico, we had people from Spain, we had people from Italy, we had people from from all these different places, and who I have formed significant collaborations with, who I still have, that I still work with, and I learned so much from them. So diversity is actually a great thing, if I would say so. With time, as what I see in terms of, since I started, all those years ago, from that very first summer at Sinai, that you can see the changes, right? You do have an increase in the people who look like you, would I say. So for example, when I was in my lab, there is one postdoc who came to the lab who looked like me, who happened to also be from the Caribbean, right? And I remember when she first came that I didn't realize at the time, being, like the only Black person in the lab at that time, that there was something to be gained from seeing somebody who looks like me from that part of the world coming to the lab. And I always tell her, and we still work together to this day, that she came and like everything shifted, right? Seeing, having this other person in the same lab, in the same department, which was, I don't think there was any other lab like that when I joined at Sinai, at least. So there's something to be said for that. And I think as time goes by, our field is going to get more and more diverse. The new generation that's going to be the future leaders of tomorrow, they're more diverse than, again, when I started. There are still all these barriers that will limit the education and the recruitment and retention and the advancement of these people. And these are some of the things that I can see that we still have to, there's still a lot of room for improvement along those lines. And what I will say to the young generation is, find something you love doing, right? Find something you love doing and go for it. It doesn't matter what it is. Find something you love, go for it. Training is hard, right? Training is hard in of itself. And there will be barriers, there'll be challenges along the way, especially as women of color, they will be there. But I feel that for me, what helped me to get to this point where I am today, talking to, on this panel, is one, mentorship, forming a network. I cannot stress that enough. Forming this network, and I think that's like the key. You work hard, you're intelligent, but having that network of these diverse groups of people, they don't necessarily have to look like you for you to have that relationship, that advocacy that will help you as you move on in your career. I think that's key. Find something you love, and mentorship.
Thank you. I think you pinpointed it very well. And Alexis, can we turn to you for your information in terms of the future of medicine and what you would advise the next group?
Yeah, so I would echo everything Marjorie said in terms of the importance of diversity in medicine. In particular, to share with you a story, like I said, the stereotypical orthopedist is doing things with a lot of brute strength and force. And I had one female attending that I worked with, a trauma surgeon, when I was in residency. And she, I think it was someone had dislocated hip, and we had to reduce it, put it back in place. And she said something to the effect of, you don't need to use brute strength and force to do that. All you need to do is use your brain. That was just so impactful to me, because she was right. You don't need to, you can use your intelligence to do that. And that's one of the benefits of being a woman, I guess, but of just having a diversity of thought, because that really helps to spur innovation. In terms of, also, I would also build upon the networking piece that Marjorie said. I think another good piece of advice that I was given before was, you want to continue building relationships, because when you really need it, it's too late to build that relationship. So continue to do it so that they're there when you need them.
Thank you. Wonderful additions. And next we have Anna. Would you please add to this?
So I think I'm very optimistic by nature. I am a very optimistic person, and I think science is really advancing at light speed. And I think one of the strengths right now is like team building. Like science used to be silos when we started, and now everything is like big program projects in which you have combination of different, approaches to the problem. And like you have to build teams. And I think in my experience, having the opportunity to be the leader of one of these projects has really taught me how everybody contributes, and really to listen to each other. And I think that I have a very good feeling that this is how science is going to continue, and we're going to start really seeing much more like collaborations. And it's really like in this pandemic in particular, it has been amazing. But the other thing that is really important is to reach out and to bring things up. Like don't stay quiet. You don't have to be upset or like complain. You just need to say, we need, I was talking, for example, things like that. Like I was speaking, or I just bring your opinion, and don't take things personally, but just be assertive without being aggressive. And I think just this goes a long way, like really do not stay quiet. And if you bring things up, like I remember like when I was promoted to professor, or I was nominated for the promotion, and I brought it to I mentioned to my chair, I said, that I will be the first woman professor in this department. He's like, really? I say, how long have you been chair? How many women were promoted? So they don't even realize. I think a lot of men, or in a lot of settings, it's not really that they don't want it, it's that they are not aware of it. So it's just make people aware of things, do mention it, because those are things that need to be mentioned, because if nobody mentions them, they don't change. And I think it doesn't have to be from the point of view of I'm complaining about it. It's just, I'm telling you, you were not aware of this. So I think that's what I think is changing. You know, women are not afraid of speaking up, and I think we should continue that way. And we should continue to build teams. I used to put my babysitter in my acknowledgement slide because she made my career possible. So I always thank Margarita for everything because I could go to meetings because she stayed with my kids. So I think, you know, really thank people that help you along the way, and then just continue building those teams. And I agree with everything everybody else said
Great.
about this.
Thank you so much. And last but not least on this, Allison Friedman, please. Allison.
I'll answer the highlight part of this. I think I'm kind of on the other end of this. So the highlights for me is when I support these women in my lab and the diversity we have at Hunter College, and I get the call that they're at Einstein, they're at Sinai. Every time I use my network to get one of my students a summer internship, and now it's been enough time that those internships have now turned into doing PhDs successfully at sometimes at Sinai, sometimes at Einstein, at Columbia. And that's, for me, I'm seeing the change live. You know, I'm seeing these students that I never would have at Sinai would have ever encountered, you know, this diversity of students who are now making huge impacts, right? They're now members of labs all over the United States because of my network, because I had that network of people who were my colleagues, not because I thought ahead to network with them, but because they were people with shared interests. And now apparently they are in my network, but I didn't know that at the time. But luckily they're my network and my students' network, and I'm sharing that now down the line. So that's something to highlight from being at Hunter.
Yes, terrific. And as a City College graduate, I can assure you that that makes a tremendous difference, that the openings from the City University faculty. So that's the end of our official questions. And I will now handle some of the questions and ask you some of them. But the first one I'm going to handle came from a request earlier of somebody who signed up for the webinar. And the question was, how do you handle sexism, especially direct bias against your work? From a superior in STEM, as a trainee, from peers, from colleagues, or support staff. So the question is, have you faced sexism, and then how did you handle it? And at the end of your answers, I will add something to it. So anybody want to take that question? Have you dealt with sexism?
Yes, of course. Of course, I've had my most recent and one of the most comical was there's too many women in this room, and I had to, as you know, as Anna said, to be polite, you know, to be assertive but polite and say, you know, that's inappropriate, you know, and then give them the airspace, that negative airspace to correct his statement, you know, that. So it's that balance of trying to find and be, you know, take that breath and say something, opposed to being like, I wish I said something. So I always arm my female students with, you know, the statements they can say, right? You know, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I think you should rethink that statement. Or is this what you mean to say? Did you really mean to say that? Because sometimes people aren't thinking, you know, or they're not aware, or they have so much bias they can't tell. So that's, you know, what I do for my students is I give them these 3 statements so they're not kicking themselves later on to say, oh, I wish I would have said something, but I was caught so off guard. You know, be prepared. It's like you know, you have self-defense training. You know, people aren't you know, ready to do this all the time. But if you train yourself to take that deep breath and be assertive, right, but polite, right? That's the key. And that I've encountered. That's my training so far in that.
Right. Yeah. So if you would bring up the slides again, we have faced in the fields of science and medicine, and especially at Mount Sinai, that we do deal with sexism. And so I wanted to use this opportunity to bring to people's attention the multiple ways in which misconduct can be reported. I don't think Sinai is any worse than any other place in academia. There may be some extraordinary places, but there are some really terrible ones. And so what we've done is to put together a tremendous number of resources for many ways to report misconduct, to go to someone who can help you if you don't have the words that Allison has, if you don't have the support of your chair. And so just very quickly, there's human resources, there's Title IX. I happen to be our Title IX coordinator, the Office of Gender Equity, the Office of Women's Careers, the Office for Diversity and Inclusion, especially when you're dealing with something that has to do with being, quote, different. And the next slide just continues. You can see that on the next slide, there are additional specifically things for the trainees where they can report when they've had an incident of misconduct, but also when they can report that somebody's done something really good so that we can follow through on learning from them. And professionalism in terms of the faculty, the Ombuds office, the compliance. But the one thing that I would really like to get across, especially to anybody who is affiliated with Sinai, is that you are protected totally against retaliation or intimidation if you report misconduct, and no unprofessional conduct will be tolerated. So this, I just wanted to take since that was the first question that came in, I thought it was important for us to use the opportunity to show this. So that's the end of that slide. The second question that came in, have you ever felt you are being taken less seriously than your male colleagues? How do you overcome the feeling of not belonging? And people often talk about feeling like an imposter. Or how do you, why don't you have a seat at the table? What strategies, examples, and experiences can you share? Allison just shared arming her students. Are there other things that you've used when you've been dealing with this kind of situation of being taken less seriously than someone else?
I mean, I don't think I can say that I was taken less seriously, but yeah, you feel that there is this kind of assumption that males are better, or that they say it in a better way. And I think it's just for women, it's just like try to participate in things that make a difference. You know, for example, if you are tired of like not having a lot of help in getting to meetings because you need to bring your kids, just try to organize a meeting and try to bring that to their attention. You know, try to be involved in things. Every time, for example, the scientific meetings are organized by at least a woman, there are more women invited. You know, it's just really being part of the solution, or being part of volunteering for things. It's a lot of work, but if you don't put the work, do the legwork to actually make the change and make the difference. And I think the more women that are more like visible and in this type of roles, the more that they will be less biased in terms of considering them not as efficient or as qualified to do the job. So it's just, let's try to volunteer for more things and do more things to make the difference.
I wish I could continue for another hour, but I can see that our time is almost up. So if I could have the last slide, just to remind you that there's ways to stay connected. We will, this has been recorded and will be available on the webinar, and anyone who's signed up for the webinar will also be getting a follow-up. Just to give you again the contact information, I think this should be the beginning of a series, and we should have all four of you back. I cannot thank you enough. You're just extraordinary. I am filled with pride in seeing how we have contributed to the larger field of science and medicine through training of the four of you, and how you go on to train the next generation. So this is the Office of Alumni Relations and Development. There's that thingy that you can take a picture of and scan the flow code if you'd like to connect with the office. And thank you again. It's been an extraordinary afternoon.